History usually measures power in predictable ways. We look at the size of conquering armies, the scale of monuments carved in stone, and the total destruction of enemies. In the first century, that standard was set by the Roman Empire. It was an inescapable superpower, a regime built entirely on relentless military force and absolute political authority. Yet the figure who ultimately outlasted that empire and exerted a greater influence on human history had no soldiers, held no political office, and possessed zero wealth. His origins were as obscure as possible. Born to a carpenter named Joseph and a young woman named Mary, his story begins with a harsh journey across the Judean desert, forced by a Roman census to travel to their ancestral home. When they arrived in Bethlehem, there was no room for them. Jesus was born in a common shelter for animals and laid in a feeding trough. There were no royal trumpets to announce this birth. The only recorded witnesses were common shepherds working the night shift in nearby fields and foreign travelers who followed a star to an unassuming Judean town. So how does a child born with absolutely no institutional leverage grow up to become the defining focal point of human history? 30 years later, Jesus began his public work. But instead of marshaling a rebellion or seeking a political throne to challenge Rome, he chose a completely different path. He bypassed the cultural elite and went straight to the margins of society. He spent his time with the poor, the sick, and those the empire deemed expendable. Historical texts describe him healing the blind, feeding thousands with minimal food, and calming storms. Yet these physical acts were meant to support a much deeper underlying message. He introduced a philosophy designed to dismantle traditional ancient power dynamics. He commanded his followers to love your neighbor as yourself. Then he pushed that logic to a point that defied human instinct. He taught that loving your friends is easy, but true strength requires something much harder: forgiving your enemies. This was an ideological revolution. Jesus was weaponizing empathy and forgiveness against a world built exclusively on force. A message that elevated the weak and commanded love over obedience presented an immediate threat to the fortified establishments of Jerusalem, both the religious leaders and the Roman political machine. The state reacted swiftly and brutally. Jesus was arrested, subjected to a rapid trial, and sentenced to crucifixion, the most agonizing and public execution the Romans could devise. Even while suffocating on a Roman cross, he executed his own doctrine perfectly. He prayed for the forgiveness of the very men killing him. He died, and his followers laid his body in a stone tomb, sealing the entrance. By all traditional metrics, the movement was over. But 3 days later, women from his group arrived at dawn to prepare the body. They found the massive stone rolled away, and the tomb entirely empty. According to the historical accounts, Jesus appeared to his followers one last time, issuing a final directive. Take this specific message of love and faith and carry it to the edges of the earth. Rome's attempt to crush the movement with extreme violence achieved the exact opposite. His execution proved his absolute commitment to his teachings, and the empty tomb ignited an unstoppable global faith. Over the next 2,000 years, maps were rewritten, entire civilizations collapsed, and borders were redrawn countless times. The unbeatable Roman Empire eventually fractured and turned to dust, taking its emperors with it. Yet the movement started by an obscure carpenter only multiplied. His name remains a living reality for billions today because he provided a practical blueprint for the human condition. He showed people how to hold on to hope, even in the depths of deep suffering. He proved that responding to hatred with love and breaking cycles of retaliation with genuine forgiveness is a far stronger foundation than any military might ever deployed. Ultimately, the paradox of Jesus Christ answers itself. He holds his place in history because he demonstrated that true greatness is never determined by wealth, weapons, or birthright. It is determined by a life lived entirely for others.